Welcome back to the Void. We are going over the bite model again, just to reinforce last week's ideas and make sure that we all understand what exactly this thing is. Because this sort of uh, because this sort of thing is very important to understand and also very easy to misunderstand. So last week we talked about what the bite model is and what sort of points make up the bite model. What makes up behavior modification, information control, thought control, and emotion control. And we've talked about like what sort of examples that you could find, and then we went into different sermons and life advice things and pointed out whether it was cult-like or not. But one thing I didn't cover last week was how to tell when something is being used for good or for ill. And that's because not everything on the bite model is necessarily a bad thing. You can take it to an extreme for sure, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. So, for example, if I went to behavior control, we would find that behavior control has modify behavior with rewards and punishments, control clothing and hairstyle, regulate what and how much you eat and drink. And the thing is, this stuff is also, like, yes, it's found in cults and whatnot, but it's also like the kind of stuff your parents do with you when you're growing up. And does that mean parenting is a cult and kids are like trapped in the cult of their upbringing and their family? No. And the reason is, one, because they aren't using enough of these across all four spectrum, and also because it is on the constructive side of the influence continuum mostly. Optimally, that's where it would land. So I want to go through this so that we can understand like when you can identify problematic behavior versus behavior that is simply used to reinforce good behavior. So it goes from constructive and healthier to destructive and extreme. On the constructive side, we have, it starts with leadership as the healthiest, and this is honest, trustworthy, accountable, and transparent. So this is how you would approach a person, how you would use, this is what your approach would be if you were using these techniques responsibly. You'd be honest with people, let them know what you're doing, let them consent, trustworthy, not breaking barriers or going over people's limits, accountable. So if you make a mistake, if someone becomes uncomfortable, you are accountable to that, and you like back off or you apologize and listen to them and then do better. You don't like keep going and reinforce this dogma to a person's detriment. And of course, transparent, so people know what you're doing when you're doing it to them. This ensures that we are respecting everyone's individuality, because it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all plan that a lot of cults sort of enforce. That's really the difference, is that you have your individuality, your choice, and free will. And whereas in a cult, you are sort of programmed with a certain personality. You see it with Jehovah's Witnesses, with those big fake smiles, and those two perfect families. You see that with Scientologists a lot too. People who are conspiracy theorists will sometimes point out certain features that, no, I'm not going to use that example because that's a bad example. But yeah, there are when you're in a cult, you do sort of get assigned a personality, or at least personality traits, whereas this stuff is used to encourage your own individuality. So you have, as well, some other ways that you can use this stuff responsibly is if you're an organization, you can do it through informed consent, as I had mentioned before, checks and balances to make sure that what you're doing does not go too far and that people can always use something else in the system to sort of balance things and keep themselves safe. Transparent again, and encourages growth, encourages people to be their healthier self versus being, conforming to the mold that they must attend to, becoming a child of Christ or whatever. So then we get to destructive, and this is the side where it becomes dangerous. This is the side where it becomes cult-like. In leadership, if you have people who clone people, like, you must be like this person, modify their behavior to be more like this idea, and then everyone sort of acts the same, that's poor leadership. That's encouraging conformity, which is just not healthy. Obedience and dependency, especially dependency, that's a big one. If you are training the people underneath you to be dependent on you for things, rather than being able to go out and get their own supplies or meet their own needs, that is a sign that what you're doing is cult-like and problematic. Fear and phobia, preying on people's fears, using those guilt mechanics that we learned about with the emotion control, that kind of stuff is very much used in dangerous cult mindsets and not used in constructive, healthy mindsets. So if there are things such as censorship or doctrine over person, where the doctrine is right and the people, they must just be sinful, or they must just be misinformed, or they just must not be awakened yet, they must still be one of those sheeple, someone who's still asleep, asleep to the truth. That sort of stuff is dangerous and cult-like. And if people are pressuring you to think or act a certain way just because that's how the organization believes you must act, then that is a sign that you're in a cult. So if you see organizations that are built in a pyramid shape, so MLMs, stuff like that, MLMs are usually cults. MLMs are very much focused on motivating you to stay motivated and just sell more, ignore the losses, just keep going, just keep trying. You can do it. If you aren't doing it, you aren't good enough. You need to do better. Look at all these people that are doing better than you because they committed and they found the happy thing. Or we should look at MLM sometime. I think that would be really interesting to sort of look at their promotional material and break that down. If you haven't seen Illuminati, by the way, she does that really well on her channel. You can find her on YouTube or Twitch. Really fun. Naughti. Really good. But anyways, organizations can be authoritarian, sort of like top-down prescriptive ideas, just given out from the top. The ends justify the means, so you're allowed to do whatever you want as long as it helps the organization. People are allowed to do whatever they want to you as long as it's within the organization's best interests. And it's closed to preserve power. Now, again, you don't have to have all of these or all of these to be healthy or destructive. You don't have to have, it can be like a mix, and you can end up somewhere like here or here or here maybe. You're never going to have a perfect situation. There's always going to be something. It's just a matter of how effectively it's used for people's good and independent gain over conformity and a single group mindset. There we go. So just keep that in mind when we're going through this, that as I mentioned last week, the bite model has an exponential scale to it that helps determine how extreme people are getting. So even if they have some things from the bite model, even if they have information control where they encourage you to spy and report on others' misconduct, the HR asks people to report on misconduct from other employees. The HR is not using that information to be destructive and extreme. It can, but usually it isn't. So I think that would be something that people would that it's important to remember, that there's always going to be degrees to this. There's always going to be shades of gray and kind of a cult, maybe a cult, sort of cult-like, or no. It might look a little weird, but it's actually healthy and safe. So don't be afraid of certain things just because you see them, but think about them, analyze them, try to see if in the broader picture those problems are actually genuine and real, like if they can actually add up to serious issues, or if they can simply be accepted as part of the process and part of the system that ends with people being in better situations. That's the key. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what y'all have to say. Just scream it down in the void below. Don't forget to hit that like button, share, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. And remember, everyone, the void loves you.